Protecting data across modern decentralized networks presents challenges that traditional backup solutions can't handle. At best, you'll waste time and money managing multiple solutions. At worst, gaps in coverage will leave your data vulnerable. Barracuda Backup is a single cloud-integrated solution that simplifies the backup process and allows data replication to anywhere on your network, a private cloud, Barracuda's cloud, or to the AWS public cloud. Reclaim your data. Try Barracuda Backup free at barracuda.com/backup.
Welcome back to the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz filling in for the guys on this holiday Monday morning. If you want to listen to us regularly, Spain and Fitz, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern weeknights. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. We're hoping to chat with Tim Hasselbeck, see if we can track him down. In the meantime, some breaking news this morning as Mike Mularkey has been ousted by the Titans. Field Yates breaking the story, our ESPN NFL insider. He was on SportsCenter with Nicole Briscoe, and this is what he had to say about the Titans' decision.
Feel like a full-on endorsement from the Titans ownership group after that win last week. And we understand that this past Saturday night was not a particularly strong performance from the Titans. They were overmatched against the Patriots. But at the end of the day, a coach who has long been around the NFL and knows how it works is unfortunately out of a job for the Tennessee Titans this morning, and the team will begin its search, and you can figure immediately. And obviously the Titans, with Marcus Mariota in tow and a good young ascending roster, are going to be a coveted job.
So that's the news from this morning. Mike Mularkey fired by Tennessee. Let's go to the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line and chat with Tim Hasselbeck. Let's start there, Tim. Are you surprised? This is a team that is not a perennial playoff participant. They get to the divisional round and their coach is out. What do you think inspired the decision?
Well, I think what inspired the decision was that it was heading this direction, throughout the regular season, and then they kind of sneak their way into the postseason, and then they come away with a win. And I think ownership was kind of in an interesting spot because Mike Mularkey kind of brought to everybody's attention kind of the rumors swirling around his job security, and it basically took that for ownership to come out and kind of give him a vote of confidence. And then you follow that up with, a playoff game against the New England Patriots where they just looked overmatched. They seemed like they were, pretty far away from being a true competitor in that football game. And so, I think that it was probably trending in this direction all along, with the exception of 1 week coming off a wild card victory.
So, Tim, if you're a head coach and you're looking at the Titans and you see Marcus Mariota, do you see an elite quarterback there?
No, I don't think Marcus is elite right now, but I think that if you're a coach looking at that job, you look at Marcus as a positive to that job. I don't think that there would be people that look at that job and say, I don't want that because I'm stuck with him. I think plenty of people believed when he was coming out and still believe that he can be a top-tier starter. He's not there now. There's obviously things that he can do better than many because of his just athletic ability and ability to kind of make plays. But as a passer inside the pocket, he needs to develop him. And I think one of the reasons he hasn't, the way that some other younger quarterbacks have, is in large part because of the offense that he's played in. And I have to think that has to be, part of the decision to part ways with Mularkey and really his offense coordinator, Terry Robisky.
Talking to Tim Hasselbeck, what do you make of that play at the end of that incredible Saints-Vikings games? Marcus Williams, everyone's trying to figure out, was he trying to avoid a PI? Did he think the ball was going to be shorter and going to the other receiver in the vicinity? Did he just plain whiff? How do you see that play?
Well, the way I see the play is as good of an offensive play as it was, and it's I don't want to take credit away from the Vikings. It's a worse defensive play. I mean, it really is it's not this, amazing, catch by Stephon Diggs. It's really a whiff by Marcus Williams, as you said. What is he doing? I guess only he could answer that question. I mean, he looks like he closes his eyes and ducks his head. I don't know. Maybe he's afraid of a 15-yard penalty in that spot, which would obviously, have put the Vikings in a situation to kick a game-winning field goal. But It's kind of an inexcusable play. And, everybody is blaming Marcus Williams, and I understand. But Ken Crawley, who's the underneath defender, he doesn't help Marcus Williams out much either because he's playing so shallow. So it's just kind of one of those plays that you practice it all the time throughout, the season. You kind of call them your last four. You probably have a group of four of those that you try to get to, and they rarely, if ever, work. And it's just kind of remarkable to see one work in that situation.
We're talking to Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. So, Tim, Case Keenum through the pass, obviously, and he continues to move on in the playoffs. What is his future with the Vikings at this point?
I think they have to franchise him. I don't know how you kind of just close the door on him. Let's say, for example, you could get Kirk Cousins. Okay, let's say that was going to be, your response to fill the position if Case Keenum walks. You've got to pay and probably guarantee Kirk, 3 times that. So, franchising Case is probably your best option because you're going to pay him, under $25 million on a 1-year deal. You basically do what, the Redskins have done to Cousins and say, hey, it was great, but let's do it another season. It's a massive raise for him. He's not going to hold out. And so I think that's your best scenario in terms of attacking the position. And I also think they end up re-signing Teddy Bridgewater. I think they let him see what's out there in free agency, and then they signed Teddy Bridgewater to a backup deal.
So you think Case Keenum's a starter next year?
Yeah, listen, based on what he's achieved this year and the fact that, Minnesota has to have an answer at the position, Case Keenum for 1 year on the franchise tag, I believe, is the best that they're going to be able to do.
Good stuff. Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Looking ahead a little bit, we've been talking about how the reason that the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Steelers was so much because the Steelers were looking ahead. But this is the second time they've beaten them. They put 75 points on them in their 2 meetings. Are we maybe underestimating that this Jaguars team is good enough to beat a team even if they aren't overlooking them?
Yeah, I think it's a great point by you. I mean, the truth is, we all kind of fall into it. I'm guilty of it. We favor offenses so much more than we favor defenses. We do. It's just kind of the nature of, how we cover pro football on TV. And so when a team's defense is significantly better than its offense, I don't think that we group them in the same caliber, as we do other teams. And there's a reason for it. Blake Bortles has had stretches where he's looked like the guy that we'd seen, leading up to the season. But I think one of the reasons that you do have to take them seriously is that their defense, it's undeniable how good they are. From a personnel and scheme standpoint, they're tremendous. And, when you look at them offensively, because they've been able to run the football a bit, and Bortles has had stretches where he's actually been really good. Because he's had those stretches, I think that it does make them, a legitimate threat, and it does make them a team that, has the ability to go in, to Pittsburgh and really kind of embarrass them. So if you look at weeks 13 to 15 for Blake Bortles, he was awesome. And then if you look at, really kind of the end of that game yesterday against the Steelers, he was outstanding there too. I think we're holding against him, some of the kind of past sins of his career.
That being said, Tim, if you're looking at a Super Bowl that's Case Keenum versus Blake Bortles, are you jumping up and down with excitement, or are you sort of rolling your eyes?
Well, hey, listen, as a guy that achieved less in his playing career than both of those guys, I'm happy for him. I'm glad to see him. Are you kidding me? Good for those guys. Look, I kind of feel like, Case Keenum's got a little bit of a, almost a Kurt Warner story to him. So I'd be excited to see Case. Look, Blake Bortles, it's obviously, he's not playing the position the way other guys are. Certainly not even Bortles and obviously not Tom Brady. So I'd be excited to see Brady and Keenum in the Super Bowl. But I do think that the Jacksonville Jaguars have the ability to make it a tight game because of their defensive personnel. It's just a matter of if Bortles can avoid the bad mistakes, against the, an always disciplined Patriots team.
Tim, before we let you go, just a personal opinion. We've been talking about 8 new teams in the playoffs this year. Some of the narratives that we're used to, some of the teams that we're used to seeing go far, not making it. Are you a fan of seeing some of these kind of surprising teams advance, or are you of the opinion that some have that, oh, this is kind of disappointing, I don't want to watch teams with quarterbacks that are sort of subpar?
Yeah, you know what? I like this. I truly think this. I think Case Keenum has had an MVP-type year, but he's not Drew Brees, and so – I think the casual fan probably does look at it and go, well, this isn't as much fun. I mean, it'd be so much better to have Drew Brees in this. I mean, the guy's a Hall of Famer. And, look, that's fair. But look, Case Keenum played every bit as good as Drew Brees did yesterday. I think he deserves it. I think Bortles is the outlier, and obviously it's interesting, because you have an injury situation for Carson Wentz. So that's why – Foles is in the mix here, and so you never want to see that. But I think there are more than 4 good quarterbacks in the NFL, and if it's always the same 4 guys, then I don't know that that's much fun either.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks for making time for us, Tim. Really appreciate it.
All right, see you guys.
Thanks, Tim.
Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get the feeling of being rewarded with gold status at Shell with the Fuel Rewards program. Download the Fuel Rewards app, join, and start saving 5 cents a gallon today. Coming up next, what's wrong with the Cavs? And can they snap their 3-game skid tonight against Golden State? Also, weekend observations coming up a little later. I'm Sarah Spain. He's Jason Fitz. This is the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Winning at sports and at sports broadcasting means changing things up.
Just like La Quinta Inns and Suites is changing up their look.
A renovated lobby that's so contemporary it even makes Golic look cool.
Yes, it does. And a totally updated fitness center that even has Wingo feeling like a workout.
I'm ripped. Plus plenty of comfortable spaces to hang out.
Yep, this La Quinta look definitely has a vibe of victory.
So you can just relax, refresh, and get ready for your next big meeting.
Prepare to win at business with La Quinta Inns and Suites.
Book now at LQ.com.
Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz filling in for the guys. Spain and Fitz regularly on weeknights, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. This is SportsCenter on ESPN Radio. Breaking news this morning, the Tennessee Titans parting ways with head coach Mike Mularkey. This comes after the Titans got blown out by New England Saturday, 35-14 in the divisional round. Vikings with a walk-off 61-yard touchdown from Case Keenum to Stephon Diggs. They beat the Saints 29-24 to advance to the NFC Championship game. They'll travel to Philadelphia to face Nick Foles and the Eagles. Blake Bortles led the Jags to a wild 45-42 win over the Steelers at Heinz Field. They'll head to New England next weekend to take on the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. And finally, in Australia, part of a highway is literally melting. For those who've been in the grips of the winter weather buffeting the northeastern U.S. and Nova Scotia, suffering the throes of bitter winds and whipping snow, there might be some solace in knowing that somewhere in the world, warmth still exists. In fact, so much warmth, it's literally melting a major roadway in Australia. Police in Victoria warn motorists to expect delays and to avoid the right-hand lane of the Hume Freeway. The reason? There's a 10-kilometer stretch of road that is melting. For all the latest headlines and information, tune into SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day. Fitz, there's a story that just popped into my news feed that we'll need to talk about later, involving a sort of new up-and-coming celebrity talking about the very small size of his crotch. But we'll get to that later.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Just offered it up. Not the crotch, the information, although probably the crotch too.
Thank you for the clarity.
Please,
Perfect.
Somebody take this, please. The Cavs. We saw those back-to-back 25-plus point losses. Everybody's talking about the statistic. No team has ever won an NBA title after losing back-to-back games by 25 points or more in one season. Only one team has ever even made the finals with that statistic. And we expected probably the kind of bounce back that you usually see from a talented team when they suffer two truly embarrassing losses, particularly when LeBron's got a minus 39 plus minus, when he's losing games by the most points in the history of his career. And instead, Cavs just slid right toward the end of that road trip with another loss, allowing the Pacers to come back from 22 points down to beat them 97-95 on Friday night. And they were competitive, at least. It was a close loss, but wow, that is To me, we keep having this conversation about at what point do we actually worry about the Cavs, and when do we stop saying this is what they do every year? They do the ups and downs, and then they get to the postseason and they turn it on. This display on this road trip, Fitz, this feels different to me.
Well, and I think particularly the Indiana loss felt different than the other losses. I know we talked about blowout losses before this time they were in it, but let's face it, you're not used to seeing a LeBron James team have a 22-0 run in the first half and then find themselves suddenly in the second half melting down. Not only that, in the fourth quarter, there were opportunities for the Cavs to separate, and they just didn't get it done. At the end of the game, it looked like LeBron was frustrated, right? And he had the opportunity to go in and do the game-winning. He pulled a full Giannis, stepped out of bounds, turns the ball over. Even at that, he still had the opportunity for the game-winning shot, didn't hit it. So in this moment, it's a very human. That's going to happen sometimes. But it's a lot of human pieces that we're seeing around LeBron. And when you see that stacked on top of the fact that they haven't played well throughout this whole road trip, I think it's valid at this point to scratch your head and say, what the heck is going on? Maybe we'll make fun of ourselves in 6 months like we did at the beginning of the show about our football predictions. But I don't think it's unfair right now to look at the Cavs and say they don't feel superhuman. It feels broken, and it feels like the East is anybody else's for the taking if somebody steps up.
Well, and as you said, we've seen LeBron lose his cool with his own teammates, right? We saw him take over the huddle, and I love the fact that Kyrie Irving liked the shot of him screaming at his teammates on Instagram. But we haven't seen him lose his cool in terms of his abilities on the court, his ability to understand the game situation and to make good on it. And the reason for that was Lance Stevenson. LeBron absolutely let Lance Stevenson his feelings, and this is what he said after the game about how often it looked like Lance was getting under his skin.
LeBron, it seemed like Lance and you were getting a little chippy there on the floor. Did he say something to you that set you off the attack?
No, Lance just a little dirty, that's all. He a little dirty. We got history, so I already know that. So I should have known, though, that I've known since school that it's not the guy who tells a joke that gets caught, it's the guy who laughs. So they called me on a retaliation, but he played well tonight.
I like that finish.
Just a little consolation prize at the end. It's like, yeah, but he was good. It was a little tap on the head.
And here's what Lance Stevenson said to Fox Sports Indiana about actually trying to get under LeBron's skin.
I just try to get into him a little bit, try to get him a little frustrated, have him thinking about me on the offensive end, and just try to be in attack mode. And we all play good as a unit. We play smart basketball.
Meanwhile, after those back-to-back Giant losses, Ty Lue finding some positives in his team blowing a 22-point lead to Indiana.
It was a great effort. I mean, D-Wade out and IT out, so guys may have been a little tired, but I thought we fought. We played with the right purpose, defensively especially, and just got to continue to build off that.
Defensively especially, in blowing a 22-point lead. I felt really good about that.
The whole thing there feels – I get the point that you're at the end of a long road stretch and you were missing guys. I get the point, but I also think that that's not sort of the tone you want for a team that's trying to turn around and find that edge that they don't have this year. I would love an edge from the coach there that says, hey, I don't care if it was better, it wasn't enough. That's what we expect from a coach right there.
And LeBron James is going to take the heat whenever the Cavs do poorly. The question is whether Ty Lue will be his next guy he throws under the bus in order to take the heat off himself. It'll be interesting to watch that dynamic if they continue to struggle. NBA is on ESPN Radio. Tune in tonight as Steph Curry and the Warriors visit LeBron James and the Cavs. Coverage begins at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on most ESPN radio stations. Unreal if tonight the Warriors just absolutely destroy the Cavs. That will be fun to watch. Coming up next, more with Spain and Fitz. It's the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Hi, everyone. Stugotz here. Support for the Dan Le Batard Show podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you are confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you the same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you are getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Stugotz. That's rocketmortgage.com/Stugotz, STUGOTZ, equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Welcome back to the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius XM Channel 80. Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz filling in for the guys, the commits. And what did they call you, Fritz?
Yeah, Fritz. They can't, adding a letter. Stugotz is adding a letter to it. So
been on Stu's show a couple times on the weekends. He does not know your name.
Right. So I got beef with Stugotz.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I know. It's going to come back to haunt
You can
me.
regularly hear us weeknights 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern, Spain and Fitz. Let's head out to the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line where Ed Bouchette from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette awaits us. Thanks for some time, Ed.
Oh, Sarah, good to be with you. Thank you. Hi, Jason.
Hey, buddy.
I'd love to start with a quote that you managed to get from the Steelers locker room after their loss, acknowledging that there were players on the team unhappy with the way it felt like they overlooked the Jags. Steelers guard David DeCastron said, "It's embarrassing. It really is. It just blows my mind. They beat us 30-9. We played like crap, and we want to talk about New England." How much do you think that was seriously a factor in their loss to the Jags?
I don't know, Sarah, that it was a factor in our loss. I think it was a factor that it got under the skin of the Jaguars. That's for sure. They were angry. They were upset. They talked about it being bulletin board material, whether you think that's high school Harry stuff or not. They said it, and it when you don't back it up when you lose, that's what it looks like.
There was some real aggressive play calling there. Fourth down, obviously, the people are questioning for the Steelers. How did you feel about Todd Haley's performance as an offensive coordinator?
Jason, they threw two touchdown passes on fourth down. Those fourth downs looked pretty good. They were fourth and long, but when it came to fourth and short, they didn't know what the heck they were doing. A stat flashed on the screen. Ben had been 18 and 19 on quarterback sneaks. We've been harping all year long about why doesn't he ever sneak anymore. He hasn't done one since 2014. It was third and a yard, fourth and a half yard, and then another time fourth and a yard. They go wide. They pitch Bell wide. He loses 4. They take the fullback out on fourth and a half yard, and they throw a pass over the middle. In Jacksonville territory. You could say those 2 fourth down plays cost them the game.
You mentioned the quarterback sneak. There was a crazy stat. He's 18 of 19 in his career converting 4th and 1, and they haven't called it since 2014, like you said. How much of this loss do you blame on Mike Tomlin just not making the right calls at the right times?
Well, he's deciding to go for it, and then Todd Haley calls the play. So I guess in tandem you can blame both of them for those calls. You have to put this all on the coach. There was a lack of discipline starting from 6 weeks ago when Mike Tomlin started talking about the New England Patriots and how they're going to play them twice. And exact quote by Tomlin, "We should win it all." They didn't win any, not in the postseason. And, it opened the door. When he said that, it opened the door for the players to look ahead to New England. I can't imagine. I've never in my life heard a coach talk about that way about a future opponent 6 weeks before it happened, and then putting himself in the AFC Championship game, actually putting himself in the getting another Lombardi trophy by the "we should win it all" quote.
We're talking to Ed Bouchette of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Ed, with that in mind, with Mike Tomlin, what is his legacy now moving forward? What are they going to do with him?
Oh, they're not going to do anything with him. I mean, he's their coach. He did go 13-3 and earn the number 2 seed. There may be some coaching changes on his staff. I see those coming this year, and we'll see how that shakes out. But his legacy is still being written. I mean, Bill Cowher knocked on the door many times. He had a bigger loss than this one to San Diego in the AFC title game at Three Rivers Stadium, when his team was heavily favored. Lost a few more AFC title games before he finally won a Super Bowl, but, Mike is not going anywhere.
Ben Roethlisberger has already come out and said he will be back playing for the Steelers next year. Are you surprised that decision was so quick for him?
No, I think he's been thinking about it for a while. I think he'll be back even longer than that. I think he wants to play. I think he's made it up in his mind. He wants to keep playing. He has a good team behind him. We'll see what happens with Le'Veon Bell, but he has a good offense. Even if Bell leaves, I think they'll find another good running back somewhere. And, what they need to do is fix that defense. They were fixing it, and then, Ryan Shazier went down, and I'm not putting everything at that feet that he was missing, but it sure didn't help him.
What do you think the future is of Le'Veon Bell with the Steelers?
Jason, that's a hard one. Especially, there's another incident. He comes out days before the title game or before their first playoff game and starts talking about his contract. Now he's going to hold out next year. Are you kidding me? I don't know. If I'm Art Rooney, that may have pushed my final button because he's going to be $14.5 million to franchise him. He was $12.1 this year. It goes up another 10%. It goes up 20%. So I don't know. For $14.5 million, the other highest paid running backs are getting $8.5. And hey, Le'Veon Bell's a special running back, but can you use that money elsewhere? That's what they have to think about.
Talking to Ed Bouchette about the Steelers and what's ahead for them, presuming that Le'Veon does get things figured out and sticks around, they've got an incredible group of talented players on the offensive side, but it wasn't enough. So what do you think the biggest things for the Steelers are going to be in this offseason to get them where they are going farther than they did this year?
Maybe a little better focus, Sarah, on week to week. Now, they did go 13-3, but those of us who saw that 13-3 know how shaky it was because they were pulling games out left and right against teams they should have squashed. They were, pulling them out at the end. They had, at one point, 4 out of 5 games were decided with a field goal at the end. All wins for them. So that offense needs to really focus. If they get a new coordinator, that might change some things as well.
Thanks so much for your time, Ed. Really appreciate it.
All right, Sarah and Jason, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Ed.
Ed Bouchette on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $620. Coming up next, we'll talk about very odd person giving us life advice and a very odd admission by a new celebrity. That's straight ahead. Sarah Spain, Jason Fitz. It's the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Welcome back to the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and Sirius Channel 80. Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz filling in for the guys today on this holiday Monday morning. You can regularly hear Spain and Fitz weeknights, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. And I believe it's time. Oh, it's not time for the Sports Center update. I believe that's next segment. It's hard to tell. Oh, it's now. It's now. There's a little Stugotz in all of us. Put it on the screen and tell me what to say. This is Sports Center on ESPN Radio. Tennessee Titans and head coach Mike Mularkey have mutually agreed to part ways. Pats offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels seen as the current favorite to land that job. Vikings had a walk-off 61-yard touchdown pass Case Keenum to Stephon Diggs, beating the Saints 29-24 to advance to the NFC Championship game. Blake Bortles led the Jaguars to a 45-42 win over the Steelers. They'll head to New England next weekend, so it'll be Jags-Patriots in the AFC Championship game. And finally, police in Washington state say they're trying to find the rightful owner of an urn with cremated remains that was donated to a Goodwill location. In a tweet the Vancouver Police Department sent on Wednesday, authorities said they were seeking assistance to locate anyone associated with an urn with cremated remains inside that was donated to a local Goodwill. Police reportedly think the donation was accidental. For all the latest headlines and information, tune into SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day. Accidental, or perhaps the inhabitant of the urn was a special someone, and that the person who cared about it is no longer with us. So whoever donated it thought it was just a nice.
But we thought Twitter was never going to be good for anything other than yelling at people. No, it's trying to reconnect urns and people,
loved ones, and their ashes.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to get cremated. I don't want to take up space. Okay. What about you?
I definitely don't want to take up space, but if I'm going to get cremated, I don't want to be in an urn.
No. I have no interest in being in an urn. I want to be sprinkled under a tree, I think.
Oh, that's nice. I'm going to go with something easy for my wife to attain, laid on the 50-yard line of whatever stadium the Raiders are playing in at the time.
Right,
that seems easy.
Should be easy enough.
Yeah.
So we're getting life advice from Rob Gronkowski, which is never a good idea. But apparently, the good old youth of America, known for its intelligence and wise decision-making, who have already participated in things like the Cinnamon Challenge, the Kylie Jenner Lip Challenge, the Bath Salt Challenge, where they pour salt in their hands, hold ice until it burns, douse themselves in rubbing alcohol, set themselves on fire, and throw boiling water on people. These are all different challenges that people have done.
Was that all in one challenge?
No, I believe, I think
the bath salt thing?
I think that is the Bath Salt Challenge. You're supposed to pour salt in your hands, hold ice until it burns, douse yourself in rubbing alcohol, set yourself on fire, and then throw boiling water on. I have not witnessed that one, so I can't be sure if those are all the same, but by themselves, bad enough, altogether even worse. Now kids are biting into liquid laundry detergent packets or even cooking them in frying pans and then chewing them up before spitting the soap out of their mouths. It's called the Tide Pod Challenge. It's not smart. It's really bad for you guys. It can be toxic and it never goes away. People end up in ambulances and hospitals. It's very bad. So Tide, in an effort to curtail this, has decided to ask Rob Gronkowski for a little bit of help. So this is a little ad. This is how it goes. Hey, Gronk, is eating Tide Pods ever a good idea?
No.
That's right. Not even as a joke?
No.
Should you use Tide Pods for anything but cleaning clothes?
No.
Are you sure?
What the heck is going on, people? Use Tide Pods for washing, not eating.
It seems very simple. And yet, somehow, we have Gronk needing to tell us not to eat laundry detergent pods. What is going on, Fitz?
Do you know why I'm angry about this, Nike? I'm mad, okay? Because, here I am. I'm living in two cities right now, right? And so I'm sort of the quasi-bachelor thing when I'm in Connecticut. And I got this little washer dryer unit and apartment and everything. And I rely on the pod because they're clean, super easy, and I don't have to measure anything. You jerks out there doing this challenge are going to ruin it. Eventually, they're going to take pods out of the stores, and then I'm going to have to go back to measuring things and keeping it off on the side. And I'm angry. Stop, America, because I want to be able to use my pods.
You know when people talk about the good old days, and sometimes the good old days mean stuff like, kids would just eat poison all the time and die, and that was just the way it is, right? But there's also, this just came up the other day where I saw, an old kid's playground from, the 1900s, and it's about 15 feet high. There's kids hanging off of it as if they look like they're on, scaffolding for construction equipment. And I do think about, did kids get hurt more often, or were people less of candy asses, so they just took care of themselves better? Why have we gotten to the point where we need to tell people not to eat detergent pods?
Well, I can't, I don't have kids, so I can't speak to how this has happened. I just know that if I'd even come close to the laundry pod, the wrath of my mother from 4 rooms away would have been you would have been able to feel it down the street. So
right, but I guess the difference is there's kids doing it by mistake, right? They wander in and it looks like food, and then there's this, which is teenagers challenging each other to it and filming it.
And I was a stupid teenager, but I think even I would have been smart enough to be hey, guess what? Laundry detergent? Probably shouldn't eat it. I mean, there's a moment here where I want just a little bit, just a tiny bit of common sense here. And I believe that when you apply for colleges at that point, have you done any of these challenges should be
exactly.
a test, and you take it and they're no, I'm sorry. You're not welcome
here.
We
don't want you here.
Right.
At DeVry. You've taken the Tide Pod Challenge.
I'm sure you could still get into Tennessee, but nowhere else.
Ouch.
I'm throwing shade because I live there. Come on.
Speaking of bad decisions, have you ever played this game HQ?
No.
Okay, so it's this game that millions of people are getting into. You play it on your phone. I believe it happens twice a day, and it's live. So you're playing alongside millions of other people, and you're answering trivia questions. And every time you get it right, you keep advancing. And if you don't, you're done. And at the end, people win thousands and thousands of dollars. I'm not sure how it works. I don't know how they follow up with people to give them their $10,000 or whatever it is. But basically, it's really quick. You can't Google anything because it happens super fast. And people have really gotten into it. I've been at parties where they're oh, everybody stop, it's HQ time. And everyone will huddle around the phone and try to get them right. And if you get 12 in a row, you get this big prize, and I think it's split up between all of the people who get it right. So whoever's remaining at the end after all 12 wins. So one of the hosts is this guy, Scott Rogowski. And I believe he's the guy that on New Year's Eve, they just had added it to Android phones in addition to iPhone, and they couldn't handle the weight of the number of people trying to play at once. So it was frozen. And at first he didn't know that. So then he kept killing time trying to get them to fix it. And then eventually when he figured out it wasn't going well, he was so uncomfortable to watch because there's millions of people watching him waiting for this quiz to start. And he's just trying to fill time with absolutely terrible jokes. But anyway, the point is this website from NewYorkMagazine.com, The Strategist, has a thing called What I Can't Live Without. And it's like what famous people have to buy at the store. Like, what are their main items? And this guy, Scott Rogowski, decides to share a couple things that he's really into. One of them is a certain kind of glasses. You know, he wears glasses, and these are the kind he likes. They're Haskells. He also really likes this one electric toothbrush from Sonicare. And, you know, that's great too. And then he says iron grip condoms. And this is a direct quote from this guy. I'm not exactly blessed in the crotch department. And when I first became sexually active and started using condoms, I found the standard issue to be a little baggy. But then I discovered this Snugger Fit brand. Have you heard of these? They managed to hold on for even the bumpiest of rides. Total game changer. Like going for JNCOs to skinny jeans.
God, the number of things here that I'm uncomfortable with are just through the roof. Like, do you custom order these? Do you go to do you ask for it at your local store? Like, I don't even know where to go.
Also, later on, he mentions one of his favorite items from Trader Joe's, dried baby bananas, which I'm sorry, but you have to know that if you're already mentioning your terrible tiny crotch, that referencing baby bananas, maybe not.
Maybe he's trolling all of us with the entire interview, but still, I mean.
I don't even know. Maybe he just doesn't get enough action and he wants a bunch of women to be like, let's find out if this is true.
Or maybe this is just like a grown-up version of the Tide Pod Challenge. Like nobody told him no. Like somebody should have told him no.
Coming up next, how Jason and I learned this weekend that maybe we weren't the NFL experts we thought we were. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Spain and Fitz in for the Dan Le Batard Show.
Hello, I'd like to deposit this to checking.
Fate is a fickle master.
What?
The future is uncertain.
Okay, and what's my account balance?
The horizon is cloudy. I see a long, treacherous voyage filled with great peril.
Look, can I just get a deposit slip or something?
A fortune bank teller. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I see a yellow-eyed serpent and a low APR.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.